Working out these arrangements for two guitars or keyboard and guitar needs to be done with care. We saw this in the last example where everyone in the band was playing their dedicated part in the backup. Often you won't have a lot of time in a band rehearsal or at a jam session to come up with these sometimes intricate parts. The band wants to play the song, the vocalist is waiting, and their impatience can become an extra pressure on you when you're trying to figure out your part and coordinate it with the other players. It's best to organize one or two separate rehearsals with the other guitar player or with the piano or organ player to arrange all the backup parts. You'll be able to zoom in on what they are playing without the distraction of a bass or a drum or the impatient looks of the singer. If you don't do this, you might end up playing parts that clash. Now, many bands have gone into an expensive studio to record a first demo after having rehearsed or maybe even played out for months, only to find out that when they hear the recording, the individual parts don't fit together. So spend some time away from the full band with your fellow guitarist or keyboardist and figure out some grooves that work. Study the harmonic progression and figure out an interesting part. Be careful with what you do on the low end and keep in mind that you can't step on the bass player's toes. Also be aware of the melody and arrange your chords and triads in such a way that the top note never clashes with the melody note. When you get back to the full band rehearsal, you'll have some extra brain space to make sure those specific elements work. And that's because the bulk of the arrangement was made in a smaller rehearsal setting. Everybody wins, and you'll get a deeper understanding of all the individual backup parts of the song. Now let's look at one of those smaller rehearsal settings in preparation for an in-your-face folk rock groove. There's Jaap on acoustic guitar playing a pretty intense, funky groove with some small fills. I will need to figure out an electric guitar part that fits in harmonically and has its own spot in the rhythm. Rhythmically, I'll be looking for a hole, a spot where he isn't playing. I can double up on some parts of the groove, but this is not one of those kumbaya all together now type of songs. The acoustic guitar is capoed up on the 5th fret, and the chords that ring out are A minor, D minor, and E minor. Let's take a listen. The progression moves from an A minor to a D minor 3 times. In the last phrase, we're moving to an E minor and back to a D minor. This verse is played a number of times before we end on an A minor. Now Jaap's laying down a pretty thick groove, and you can almost hear the rocky bass and drums beneath it. We want to create a complementary second guitar part. Let's bring in the triads. If I support this groove by playing harmonic triads on the top 3 strings, it'll sound like this. One, two, three, four. The triads I'm playing are all on the top strings. We've seen these minor triads before when we were discussing their major counterparts. Minor triads on adjacent strings also have 3 shapes. For an A minor, for instance, you could play this triad shape with the root on top, a triad with the root on the 2nd string, and a triad with the root on the 3rd string. All these triads are movable because they don't incorporate any open strings. Keep your eye on where the root is, and you can locate the other two triads in this progression in close proximity. It gives you 3 different positions on the neck to play these triads in, but you can of course switch between them. Keeping the triads close together will get you a smooth arrangement that follows the internal harmonic progression effectively and efficiently, which leads you to these 3 positions. Position 1, A minor, D minor, E minor. Position 2, A minor, D minor, E minor. Position 3, A minor, D minor, E minor. Extensions of these triads can be found by adding notes from one of these triads to another, which is always a good way in, but depending on the chord progression and the key you're in, you could have some alternatives. It's always good to keep your ears open. What sounds good is good. Let's get back to the groove in a small rehearsal setting. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm playing triads on the top 3 strings in different areas of the neck. Doubling up accents in the acoustic guitar groove will give those beats extra stress. Both techniques work well, for instance, if you're backing up a solo. Playing the triads on the middle 3 strings will attract less attention. This might work better if the vocals are in the same pitch range as the top notes of the triads on string 1, 2 and 3. Again, we only have 3 of those, and for D minor you can locate them here. Root on string 2, root on string 3, root on string 4. All movable shapes, and the A minor and E minor triad shapes can be found real close. You know the drill by now. The third approach you could take is to distinguish your triad part from the intense acoustic guitar groove by playing a different rhythm altogether. You could use quarter triplets, for instance, to create a more floating rhythm on top of the acoustic guitar. Or instead of the heavy stress on the beginning of the bar, you could start your electric guitar part in the space that's left open at the end of a 2-bar phrase and kind of work your way back toward the A minor chord. Let's try that last approach for size and see what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3. Pretty cool part, played with some reverb and delay. You get to shine with your cool triadic backup part that floats on top of an intense acoustic guitar groove. You've got some options to bring to the band rehearsal, and depending on the overall atmosphere the song requires, you can make your own choice. Plus, the same triads you've researched here can be used as target notes for fills and solos. These notes have the most gravitational pull, and giving them an important role in your fills or solos will make you play in the pocket. And as a bonus, you could throw in a third, Nile Rodgers-inspired guitar part.